Welcome to What's the Verdict TV show. I'm your host, Mike the Mediator, and today I got two outstanding gentlemen. We're going to have an interesting conversation today. We're going to talk about abortion from father's eyes. But before we get started, let me introduce my team for the day. To my right here, I have Mr.
D. Anthony.
You know I'm calling him wrong, don't you? Mr. D. Anthony, how's it going today, sir?
Doing well, doing well.
And right to his immediate right, I got Mr. Rufus Hollywood. Hollywood, how's it going today, sir?
Doing great, man. Happy New Year, by the way, guys. Happy New Year.
Appreciate Happy New Year to both of you guys. I have a good fun New Year.
Great New Year. Great New Year coming in,
I
yes.
guess we both all did it safe because we all sitting here today, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. But, I was sitting back thinking, and we had some great conversation this morning. We had a hot topic conversation this morning, and we was talking about abortion. So, you know me, y'all guys know me. I brought it home and said abortion from our eyes. Every time you hear abortion, it's always about the mother's rights. Not that I'm knocking that.
Right.
But if you sit back and think about it, abortion from father's eyes, who have ever asked us our opinion when it comes to abortion?
Mm-hmm.
So, with no further delay, what do you guys think? Should we be included in the conversation or just be the sperm donor that get donated, the sperm donor that get dumped every now and then? What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think we should be. Me being a pro-life advocate and being at these abortion clinics, I see a lot of single mothers going in, and also I see some guys going in with their woman. But I always say it takes two to make the baby. So as a father, you have the right to at least be in that decision. When it comes to abortion or whatever the case may be, you deserve that right because you lay with that young woman.
Interesting.
Yeah, but not only that, coming from an old school perspective as well, it's take two tangles as well. But at the same time, if we as two people getting together and decide to make a decision, and once that decision is done, and then there's another surprise element to it, which is a child involved, then why not we make the same decision at the same time, being involved? So as a father myself, I would say all men should be involved in that decision, because eventually, if you're not involved in that decision, you'll be involved in some further down the road as well.
Right. I want to piggyback on what you said, D'Anthony. So you're saying, you see the guys going to the clinic, so they're actually supporting these mothers.
Yeah, which is a little bit surprising to me, but I have seen quite a few men, which will make me think they're in relationships, go in with their woman or with their daughter, maybe in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
and which means they probably agreed on the decision, possibly. So yeah, I have seen quite a few men go in there with the women.
And I think about that as it comes to. I was talking to some young college kids a couple of days ago about this same topic. It's one of the hot topics we have on our website. And these kids was 20 and 21-year-old men.
Mm-hmm.
And they themselves said, if a young lady got pregnant, and a month later she told them, each one of them said they wanted to keep the child.
Wow.
They was completely against abortion.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, wow, at 2021, I would think they'd be running the other way.
Uh-huh.
But every last one of them said, if I knew, even if it was a quickie at the party,
Uh-huh.
they would want to keep the child. To me, that was like unheard of, unreal, especially considering they're college kids.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, so you're willing to drop out of school to take care of a child? And they said, no, we wouldn't even drop out of school. That was news to me. I was very surprised. I would think the younger generation would be more prone, because you're part of that young generation.
Mm-hmm.
You're the under 30. Is that your line of thought as well?
It is, but I'm surprised at that because some would say men, and particularly younger men, run from responsibility. So I'm surprised that those guys said that. But me personally, if I laid in that bed, then I have to take care of that responsibility. So that was good on them, and I feel that possibly some of the younger men will take care of their babies if they had a chance.
In Hollywood, I think we're kicking around in the same age group. I think I'm just a tad bit older. We won't tell it to nobody. But what do you think? The 35 to 54 group, from your experience, talking to guys, you think they'll run from it? Or will they accept it? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a combination now. I think there's some men who are still striving toward their career goals and so forth. And it's kind of like on the women aspect of things, sometimes you see women striving toward, once they're done with their education, they're working on their career and so forth. I think a lot of men between that 35 and 50 years of age, especially if they're business owners, because at one point, if they've already had kids, they may want to go through that process again. But I've seen among our peers where sometimes at this stage in life, they don't want to deal with it at one point. So they don't mind participating if that leads to an abortion by chance. And that's always based on the relationship you have with the young lady as well. If it's a relationship where for a fact that it's going to go somewhere and it's leading to marriage per se, then it could be a different situation there. But for the majority of men that I've spoken with and referenced this issue before, most of them want to be involved. But how involved is the question would be the next step as well.
You know, that begs the thought about the involvement of the men in the abortion. And what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, let's talk about, is the abortion issue such a big deal because of the system or the government making a big deal? You're watching What's the Verdict TV show. We'll be right back in just a moment. Child support, abortion, divorces, CPS. Do fathers have a voice? Do fathers have rights? What's the Verdict TV show? Watch as we unveil the truth, remove the bias, and terminate the stigma. What's the Verdict TV show? Tuesdays, Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. right here on BPN TV. Have you ever had a question related to child support, divorce, CPS? Call the Attorney General or maybe an attorney and they just gave you a runaround. Where do you go to get help? Contact Dads Fathers of Texas. Yes, they are child support specialists. Dads Fathers of Texas can answer your question, help file paperwork, and help find a family law attorney. Dads Fathers of Texas, making child support simple. Welcome back to What's the Verdict TV show. I'm your host, Mike, the mediator, here on the stage with me and having a great conversation about abortion from Father's Eyes. I got my two guests today, Mr. D. Anthony and Rufus Hollywood, and we're talking about abortion from Father's Eyes. The one thing we want to talk about, guys, is like we said, you know, the people we have spoken to, they actually embrace being a father. Mm-hmm. From your generation under 30 to your generation between the under baby boomers, and mine's the baby boomer era. My question now is the controversy really political? I mean, because of the laws, and I'm gonna read a quote here. As of 1973 to 2013, there's been more than 55 million abortions. Now I'm gonna say that those are documented. Now we all know those that come from the clinics that are predominantly minorities who goes to the free clinics or some other place. What about the private abortions? I'm quite sure this number is much, much higher. But the Supreme Court, and I'm gonna say 1973, verbatim, say Supreme Court stripped down fathers of all legal rights to an unborn child. It's interesting how they word that. They said before that law, men was fathers before birth. Now, when I read that, I said, okay, you're not a father until the child is born, which is probably why the laws say who's the father of the child when it comes to child support.
Right.
My question is, if the government were to get out of that, would that 55 million go down or go up?
That's a great question. I think when you look at it from an advertising point and the government standpoint, I think if the government was out of the business of abortion, it would go down because we've kind of commercialized it. Because we kind of commercialized it in a sense. When you look at it from this standpoint, that abortion, it's kind of pushed upon as even the hip thing to do in a lot of these colleges. One of the biggest abortion centers is located in Houston, by the campuses of the University of Houston and Texas Southern. And it's called a mega, it's called Planned Parenthood, but it's like a mega abortion center. That's not by accident. That's pushing that culture on those young people who may have had a mistake, and so they can get an abortion. So of course the culture says, if you have sex, get an abortion. And I think if the government wasn't involved, we'll see less of that, go down. And it's also a moral issue, but I'm not going to get carried away with that.
Well, I can kind of agree to it some degree. I think it's a catch-22. And like I said, it kind of goes back to the aspect of your age, your responsibility, how you look at life sometimes. And we know as you get a little bit older, past the 30 marks, laws change every year. But even in regards to this law and legislations way back in '73, it's always leading to one thing. It's always about the money.
Right.
And I'm quite sure we'll talk a little bit about that later. But at the end of the day, it's a catch-22. Sometimes it may go up, sometimes it may go down, based on law. Also based on economics of doctors and people who perform abortions. Right. So a lot of times, like you said, the stats may show 55 million, but the reality is that it may be even more than that's recorded, perhaps. Or you may go to some of these what they call the backdoor facilities that abortions are being performed. So that's something that law doesn't talk about because you're not involved.
It's so funny, I actually heard a commercial this morning talking about if you had an unfortunate situation, then take the Plan B pill.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, did I just really hear that commercial?
Yeah. I call it, I'm gonna be frankly honest, I call it a culture of death. We've looked at abortion and it's just okay now, but I'm gonna take another step further, eugenics. Most abortion centers are in the inner city. So is it a reason why it's in the inner city?
Or the reason why the law is permitted in certain cities.
Mhm.
For these others. Now, there's something to talk about as far as law, because I remember some of the politicians in the last, 6 years talking about, your abortion rights as a woman. And of course, we had no say-so as a man.
Yeah.
The law states that. But it's funny because how politicians said that they were against it unless it decided it was based on their own personal reason where they happened to their daughter.
Right.
And if
Very
you guys
interesting.
remember some of those stories about some lawmakers saying that even if it was due to rape,
Mhm.
then they didn't want to do it. But then others came out and said, well, I don't know about that. So it's a variation of different laws pertaining to different individuals who make those laws and say, you know what, it's kind of like if it benefits me,
Yeah.
Right.
I'm all good.
Then they're gonna push the
Then
agenda.
you push
Yeah.
the agenda, So
And you
it's a
sit back and
catch-22.
think about it, they're pushing an agenda, which is politics, but then nevertheless, the main people, or persons, should I say, that should be involved in it, us as men,
Right.
I mean, there's not a single state says we have an involvement
Yeah.
in the decision-making process. And then the law says, before then, men was fathers before birth.
Mhm.
So they even telling us when we can be a father.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you think about that, that's just, something you gotta look at, and it really drives me bananas because we're fathers, and technically speaking, we're financially responsible, but it's when they tell us that we are, and I know you're about to blow it up on there, but we're about to take a quick
Okay.
break again, because you see, youngsters over here about to really get it. So we're gonna take a quick break right quick. You watching What's the Verdict TV show, and hey, abortion from father's eyes, what are you looking at? Come back and check us out. Child support, abortion, divorces, CPS. Do fathers have a voice? Do fathers have rights? What's the Verdict TV show? Watch as we unveil the truth, remove the bias, and terminate the stigma. What's the Verdict TV show? Tuesdays, Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. right here on BPN TV. Have you ever had a question related to child support, divorce, CPS? Call the Attorney General or maybe an attorney and they just gave you a runaround. Where do you go to get help? Contact Dads Fathers of Texas. Yes, they are child support specialists. Dads Fathers of Texas can answer your question, help file paperwork, and help find a family law attorney. Dads Fathers of Texas, making child support simple. Welcome back to What's the Verdict TV show. I'm your host, Mike, the mediator. To my right is Speedy Gonzalez over here, who was about to speak up a few minutes ago. D. Anthony, Rufus Hollywood. We're talking about abortion from father's eyes. And before we went on break, you had a very interesting point you was about to bring up. So go on, let me share that what you was thinking of.
I think you was asking about the fathers, and a part of the attack against the fathers is the feminist movement. And that's an area that we don't like to really go into, but the feminist movement is to say it's a woman's issue, women's rights. So what has happened is the abortion issue is a woman's right issue, and that takes the man out of the conversation, and that is a reason. And that it's for a purpose to promote the woman and take out the man. That's not by accident.
I mean, I can agree to that too, but also, as Hollywood said when we first got started, it takes two to tango.
It do.
So if it takes both of us to tango, then why don't I at least have a pair of shoes in the conversation?
Correct.
And I mean, what really is the deal behind the driving force?
And I think another aspect of this is something we always talk about as men is responsibility. And to the fact that it may be a woman's right, and it may be a feminist right, but when it comes out at the end of the day, it's all about, well, we want the fathers to be involved because there's a financial attachment to this, which now you want us to be involved without any say-so.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from a financial responsibility, if we can put the money out and we have to pay child support where it may be, questions always come up, well, if the girl you're dating gets pregnant, should you pay for an abortion?
Mm-hmm.
Should you take care of her health needs and so forth? What if she decides to have the baby?
Mm-hmm.
Then it becomes a financial responsibility, and they never come and ask the man then.
Yeah.
They don't ask you any questions.
Right.
They go straight to a law that says we are protected by law that you take care of us responsibly financially. Which then now we need to go back and look at the whole agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is it really a woman's right
Yeah.
without a man say so, or should we all be in this together?
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a financial endeavoring to say, listen, we really need to make some laws here. We need to make some things that are changing here. So for all those women out there who, we understand you women talking about your right. We understand that. But yet at the same time, you want men to be involved financially, and we don't think that's fair.
I mean, and you know, for me personally, you know, dealing with certain issues today as a mediator in family law, you see that a lot. We're not included into the conversation till dollar signs come to the table. And sadly, and I say this with all honesty, I think that's why most of us are non-compliance to the law. No excuses.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, how you gonna force me to do something but never ask my opinion?
All right.
You know, you about to say something.
I was just going to bring up, speaking about finances, Planned Parenthood, who, you know, they do abortions. I looked online about probably a month ago, goes over close to $300 million. And
Wow.
that all that is not abortion money, but some of that is. So this abortion issue is also a money issue, like we're saying.
You think about, if in this one case I saw on the internet, I think it was in Chicago, whatever, where the lady changed her mind. And the guy had to file an injunction, stop the abortion, but it was only stopped for 27 days. But she went through with the abortion. So pretty much he slowed it down for 27 days. But in that same interview, they had a woman who changed her mind and kept the child. And they hit him with back child support. But no one ever asked him his opinion.
Right.
So he couldn't say nothing about terminating the child, but then he got all the responsibility because she changed her mind. And interesting enough, the case was they had a written agreement to terminate the child.
Wow.
He even took that back to court to the judge and said, hey, here's what we talked about. Here's what we decided. At the end of the day, they said, you have no say in it. So she kept the child. Now for 18 years, this man not only didn't have no say, but now for 18 years, he's financially responsible for a child that at the beginning, he never wanted.
So it goes back to the point of the law. And,
The law,
and,
again.
And who benefits and when it benefits the person.
So, yeah,
So that's
financial
something
is,
we
I
talk
mean,
about financial, yeah.
so I mean, you know, and my question now is, you know, it's all about the money. And the question we're gonna pose next, should the law be changed? I mean, this law was made in 1973. Here's now 2015. And 2 years elapsed, and we know it's more than 55 million plus abortion. Is it time now that we revisit this law? At least update it?
Right.
You know, I mean, what do you guys think?
I think it's time to change the law because if as far as do a man have the right to be involved, right?
Correct.
He definitely should, and it's time to change the law. When it was made, I think you know we don't know what the time were. It could have been a woman's issue, but now a man should have the say. Like you say, if he you know let's just be real, stay with that woman, he have a right to determine the outlook on that child.
Go ahead.
Well, no, it's not only law should change, it's past time, the law should change.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, when you kind of study law and the legal aspects of it, you know, it's always about, we say the financial part of it, but who's really benefiting from that.
Right.
And as you notice, and you guys mentioned earlier, about where that percentage of abortions are being done at, you know, in inner city communities, low impoverished communities, and
Right.
so forth.
Right.
And so it's affecting the economy overall. But yet lawmakers decide, well, we can keep it this way because maybe this is part of their plan to keep the system the way it's designed.
Right.
So it's time for a change.
I mean, you sit back and you think about, some people say it's designed to keep the minorities down.
Yeah.
But now, with that being said, we say it's time to change the law.
Right.
Now, about to take another break. When I come back, we're gonna entertain this. If the law is changed and a man has to say so to terminate the child, that means he also has to say so to keep the child. That changes the whole
That's the whole
dynamics of
dynamic,
abortion.
Yeah.
So we come back, we're gonna talk about that. You're watching What's the Verdict TV show. We'll be back in just a moment. Child support, abortion, divorces, CPS. Do fathers have a voice? Do fathers have rights? What's the Verdict TV show? Watch as we unveil the truth, remove the bias, and terminate the stigma. What's the Verdict TV show? Tuesdays, Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. right here on VPN TV. Have you ever had a question related to child support, divorce, CPS? Call the Attorney General or maybe an attorney and they just gave you a runaround. Where do you go to get help? Contact Dads Fathers of Texas. Yes, they are child support specialists. Dads Fathers of Texas can answer your question, help file paperwork, and help find a family law attorney. Dads Fathers of Texas, making child support simple. Welcome back to What's the Verdict TV show. I'm your host, Mike, the mediator. We're having a very, very interesting conversation about abortion from Father's Eyes. You have 3 fathers here on the show today sharing our opinion about abortion. And before we left, I asked the question. Okay, they're going to change the law. So now, we all got to answer this. If they change the law and say we have a say in it, now, what do we have a say in? In the termination as well as the keeping. How does that change the conversation between us?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, you know, it's a catch-22 to every situation, just about the pros and cons. If I have a responsibility legally, whether to keep this child or not, it's also my responsibility financially.
Right.
It also brings to the point where what if I'm able to provide for this child myself? Then I should have the right to keep the child, even if she doesn't even want the child. So the law there should be able to say, listen, this man is willing and he's able and capable of the child and taking care of the child. Why not allow him to have this child? I think law should always talk about those issues as well.
Okay. So, I mean, when you think about everything's come back to money. But then, like you said, it goes both ways. If you're allowed to keep it, you got to pay for it.
Right.
But if you're allowed to terminate it, you got to pay for that. You was about to say something too, Leandro.
Yeah, I was about to say something to the fact of.
Wait till you lose your thought.
Yeah, I kind of did a little train of
Right.
thinking.
Well, I mean, you sit back and think about it. When it comes down to the discussion of abortion, like you said, there's everything from
Strategic.
of where they have the clinics,
Right.
where the largest numbers are coming from, the process, the political agenda, all that, when you sit back and think about it. So I guess the question begs the difference is, if we were involved in that conversation from day one, you got your thought back there?
Yeah.
Go ahead, before I let you
Well,
forget it.
with this question, yeah, to be honest, I kind of changed my mind for 60 because you interviewed those young men and you said that they said they would keep those
they said we keep
kids. And see, personally, I would think if men and I know it's gonna hurt us men, but if we was involved, it'll be more abortions because as men, I think sometimes if we had sex with a jump off, hey, you need to go in and handle that over there. Those responsibilities we don't want to handle. But I'm surprised. Maybe it's an age generation thing. What you think?
Okay. Well, I think age doesn't make a factor, and also responsibility of younger men as well. Because younger men now, I think for a lot of the older generation where men might come in, the 40-plus crew a lot of times, we were just talking responsibility. It's die or ever. You know what I mean? You lay in your bed, you make it, you take care of it, and so forth, and things like this. I think with the younger generation where they're not as acceptable to responsibility, they're willing to say, you know what, this is a quickie, this is a fly-by-night, we're not getting married, and there's no future. With us, it was more of a future. It was more to say that, listen, we have done this together, so let's live it, let's take care of it. And I think the generation has changed here because it's no different than the workforce or corporate America or careers right now, where you see younger men decide, well, no, we're not going to do like the old generations, we're going to do our own thing. So I think there's a big gap in between the age process there as far as responsibility is concerned.
You know what's even more interesting in that, and I'm gonna put another twist to it. Each of the boys was raised in a single mom household.
Wow.
Neither one of them was raised with their father. But yet and still, each one of them said they would keep the child.
Yeah.
Now what do you think? I mean, a fatherless home, did that contribute to their mindset on, if I had a child, I don't want to kill it?
I'm gonna use this word. That's question 22 because some young men end up who was raised without a dad end up doing exactly what their dad was and leaving their child. And some of them say, I'm doing the opposite. So if my dad wasn't there, I want to be there. So maybe those are the other young men that say, since he wasn't there, I want to be there for my child.
Right. I mean, so there's so many different dynamics when you look at it. But at the end of the day, I think we all agree when it comes to the topic, the conversation, the laws, the rules, the process, we as fathers should be involved in some part of the conversation.
Most definitely.
Not completely excluded, because if you think about, since 1973, that's what, almost 4, 5, 6 generations ago? You know, and you think about, here's young men in their 20s saying, okay, even if I have a quickie in college, in the closet with someone I don't even know their first name, you guys got to log on to the website, verdicttvshow.com, and look on hot topics. These guys, each one of them said, no matter if it was a oops moment, I want my child. But yet, they won't have zero say.
Wow.
You know, and then I posed the question, what if he had to be financially responsible to not only take care of the woman, but get her body back in shape? Again, they said, we don't care, we get a loan.
Wow.
Young kids, 20, 21-year-old boys, college kids.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you sit back and you think about it. I mean, abortion from father's eyes, maybe the politicians should watch this show.
Correct.
You know, it's thinking, well, gentlemen, you know, we're about to wrap it up here. I mean, in 15 seconds, Hollywood, talk to the young men out there and share your opinion.
Hey, listen, this is my opinion from the verdict. Wrap it up or pay up. It's simple as that.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. Wrap it up or pay up or take the responsibility and be a man.
D'Anthony?
My tidbit of wisdom is, if you're gonna do it, you gotta take care of that responsibility, and with every action comes consequences for your action. So just watch out for what you do, and know that if you made that bed, you must lay in it.
And one of my sisters told me, real simple, really clear, if you think you're gonna have a child, then pick your bedmate carefully. So, you've been watching the What's the Verdict TV show. This is our opinion about abortion from father's eyes. Come back next week and we're gonna talk about abortion from a mother's response. We'll see you next week. Child support, abortion, divorces, CPS. Do fathers have a voice? Do fathers have rights? What's the Verdict TV show? Watch as we unveil the truth, remove the bias, and terminate the stigma. What's the Verdict TV show? Tuesdays, Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. right here on BPN TV. Have you ever had a question related to child support, divorce, CPS? Call the Attorney General or maybe an attorney and they just gave you a runaround. Where do you go to get help? Contact Dads Fathers of Texas. Yes, they are child support specialists. Dads Fathers of Texas can answer your question, help file paperwork, and help find a family law attorney. Dads Fathers of Texas, making child support simple.